Afternoon, leader Dorset Spur. Immature Paul here with my school project, sharing my views on whether Frank should be given time. Why Frank should be given time by Immature Paul, age 40. So first of all, any club thinking about firing a manager after 13 games is crazy. But even more so when you think about the fact that we came 17th last season and were terrible in the league. We've got a number of key players out injured who have been out all season. Kulusevski and Madison's probably the key ones there. Both key creative attacking options that we don't have this season, and that's clearly been our biggest downfall. They're the sort of players that will unlock defences at home and make a big difference. Our better players this season, Paulinho at least until recently, Kudus at least until recently, Bergvall recently. None of these guys have played together before. They're all new players playing under a new manager that they don't know, probably in a formation they're not used to, and they're getting to know each other. It takes time. Football isn't so simple that you just put a decent manager in charge of a decent group of players and all of a sudden they turn it on. So yeah, before I even get into some facts and stats that I'm going to bring to the audience here, it's just a ridiculous notion to even be talking about in the first place. So, looking back at history, some of arguably the most successful managers, apart from one of them, who I had to include on there because I know people have been talking about them, of the Premier League era. Alex Ferguson, first season at United, finished 11th. Wenger, first season at the Scum, where he had players like Adams, Keown, Winterburn, Bold, Seaman, Wright, Bergkamp, Merson, finished 3rd. Klopp, first season at the Bin Dippers, 8th. Guardiola, backed by the whole of the United Arab Emirates, first season at Man City, 3rd. And then it shouldn't even be in the same breath as these managers, like I said, but I'm going to include him because everyone's talking about how good they are at the moment, is Lego Head, first season at the Scum, 8th. Something that all of these managers have in common is -1, that they all went on to win multiple league titles and be considered the best managers in the league for a long period of time. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but the way it's looking at the moment with how shit everyone else is, there's every chance that Dickhead is going to get added to that list at the end of this season. So first of all, it takes time. Even the best managers, the most successful managers ever. And it's also worth pointing out that every single one of these managers was at a significantly better club in terms of stature and wealth than Frank finds himself out at Tottenham. They'd also been successful before these managers joined and had good seasons. And the league back then, in almost all of these instances, whilst there might have been better teams at the top, the overall standard of the league was lower. I think everyone would admit the average club in the Premier League or First Division during these periods was lower. So whilst winning it may have been harder, finishing in the top few, as long as you had a semi-decent team in some of these seasons, was possible. So comparing Frank to some of the most successful managers in the Premier League era and an idiot seems kind of pointless to me. Those clubs had way more money at the time. They were playing in different eras. They were just clubs of a different stature, so we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to what Frank's doing to any of those guys. So if the stat man can bring up the next slide, we'll look at what some of the Spurs managers, or the 5 permanent Spurs managers before Frank did. So first column is how many points they got after 13 matches, then how many points the club got in the 13 matches before they were hired, and then the difference, or in other words, have they turned it around? And then I've added some of the better players that each of the managers had at their disposal during those periods. So first thing to notice is that Frank's only got 18 points after his first 13 league games, which I assume Nuno would have picked up a few more if been given more time, is arguably the worst out of the last 6 managers. But the important thing is looking at the points before he was hired. Obviously off the back of Ange's disaster class at the end of last season, where we only got 8 points in the last 13 games. Frank has made a significant difference to that, plus 10. Obviously Ange also started off incredibly well after Conte with first 10 games unbeaten, so it looks good for him. But what I also think is interesting here is looking at Poch's stats. If anyone was to say who's your favourite manager during the last 10 or so years at Spurs, almost everyone's going to say Poch, even though Ange won us the European Cup last season. But when you look at his numbers, although he had a decent-ish or 2 more points than Frank after 13 games, it was actually 2 worse than the genius that is Tim Sherwood, probably with a bit of AVB, got in the season before. If you then have a look at who the key players were for each of those managers in their first seasons, everyone bar Frank has club-proven leaders, world-class players, that many of which were in their prime. So taking that into consideration, if you look at how Frank's done, 10 points better than we were in our previous 13 league games, with a squad of players that have a lot of key players out injured and still need time to gel and get used to playing with each other, plus the fact that your most successful manager, whether it's a Spurs manager or pretty much anyone that hasn't joined an oil state club or a Middle Eastern club in the Premier League, or flukes and one-offs like Ranieri, has needed time to succeed, to me it's an absolute no-brainer that Frank has to stay on, and it shouldn't even be being asked at this stage. End of the season, absolute minimum, another transfer window, see how things go, then start asking questions. So, final thoughts. Despite everything I've just said, do I think that Frank is definitely the right man to lead Spurs to success? I'm not 100% sure. I don't think anyone can be. A lot of people thought after Ange had gone unbeaten in 10 games that we'd found our long-term saviour that was going to lead us to glory, and that just didn't work out. So the bottom line is it's just way too early to be drawing any sort of conclusions here. I've heard a lot of people say that we don't seem to have a purpose or a game plan, or it's not clear what he's trying to do. And I honestly think that's good. I think, to me, that's a sign that he is being flexible and adapting and trying new things, and naturally that's going to make us look like a disorganised mess at times. I think he came in with a game plan. I think he realised quickly that it wasn't going to be the right one for us. And what we're seeing now is him trying to figure out, with a couple of key players out that might ultimately shape what the final sort of strategy he lands with is in real time, and it looks messy. And yeah, I don't mind that, to be honest. I'd feel a lot worse about it if we had a clear plan that we were sticking to every game whilst getting bad results. I think we have to go through this stage. It's part of any rebuild, and based on what I've seen of Frank at Brentford, I'm confident that if he's given time and support from us and the board, that he'll do as best as he possibly can, and he'll get results for us. So yeah, ultimately at this stage, I'm 100% Frank in. We should definitely be giving him more time. But with that said, only time will tell whether he's the right man for the job long term. So until then, as we wait to see how this goes, and hopefully give this guy time, support and patience, come on you Spurs.